Yesterday, voters placed their trust in Canada's new government's plan.
A reporter leans into the microphone. If you were Mr. Poilievre, would you quit today? A pause, a slight smile, and then, that's an unfair question. I can't look into the heart of Mr. Poilievre. And just seconds later, when another reporter mentioned that Poilievre had called him badly educated in economics, can I take back my previous answer? No, that's a joke. The room laughs. Carney moves on. And right there, in those two unscripted moments, you saw something most politicians spend careers trying to manufacture and never quite pull off: composure, wit, and an instant return to purpose. Welcome to Canada Headlines. I'm going to walk you through everything that happened at Mark Carney's first press conference.
And Tatiana Auguste, and that we accept the results, as I said at the start, with both humility but also determination, because it's a vote for the government's plan, those deputies, and for the government plan. We know we need to continue to work with all parliamentarians. We will do so. Work with all premiers, which we will do so. Work for all Canadians.
After securing a full parliamentary majority, what was said, what it means, and what it tells us about the next 4 years of Canadian governance. Let's start with the context, because without it, nothing else lands properly. Canada just had an election, and not just any election. Mark Carney's Liberals didn't scrape through with a minority. They won a full majority, the first Canadian government to do so since 2019. That is significant for one very specific reason: excuses are gone. In a minority government, a leader can point to opposition gridlock, delayed legislation, and political compromise as reasons things didn't move fast enough. In a majority, that cover disappears entirely. Every decision that gets made or doesn't get made now belongs fully to one government. So when Carney walked into that press conference just hours after the results came in, the room was watching carefully. Would he celebrate? Would he deliver a long, triumphant victory speech? Would he spend the first moments savoring the win? He didn't. He walked in with an agenda, a tight, focused, results-oriented agenda. And that choice alone told you something about the kind of prime minister Canadians are now dealing with. His opening statement wasn't filled with applause lines. It was deliberate. Yesterday, voters placed their trust in Canada's new government's plan. We accept their support with humility, determination, and a clear understanding of what this moment demands. Unpack that for a moment. He didn't say, "We won." He said, "We accept their trust." That framing shifts the entire dynamic. It's not about political victory, it's about obligation. And in a country that has grown increasingly skeptical of political theater, that distinction resonates. Canadians aren't interested in being told how historic the moment is. They want to know what happens next. And Carney seemed to understand that in the very first sentence he spoke. From there, he laid out 4 immediate priorities: building a stronger Canadian economy, diversifying trade partnerships to reduce foreign dependence, delivering responsible fiscal management.
En moins d'un an. We've already announced 15 nation-building initiatives that will create over 500,000 jobs and drive over $100 billion in new investment.
And providing direct support to Canadians feeling pressure from everyday costs. What's interesting about that list is the order. The economy and independence come first. Personal relief comes last, but it doesn't disappear. He holds it and delivers it with specifics later in the conference. That structure is intentional. He's not leading with a giveaway. He's framing it inside a larger plan. That's a governing instinct, not a campaigning instinct. Here's where the press conference gets serious, and where Carney makes his boldest framing choice. Rather than opening with domestic politics, he places Canada directly inside a global reality that is becoming more dangerous by the month. His words, "The world is more divided and dangerous. The impacts of foreign conflicts and accelerating technological change are increasingly being felt right here at home." He doesn't spell out every detail. He doesn't need to, because every Canadian watching knows what he's gesturing at. a global order that has shifted dramatically. Rising geopolitical instability, trade disruptions, energy shocks, a world in which the assumptions that governed the last 30 years no longer hold. And he makes a clear distinction that becomes the philosophical backbone of the entire press conference. We cannot control what other countries do. We can control what we choose to do. That line is not rhetorical filler. It's a governing philosophy in one sentence, and it shows up again and again throughout the conference, in the policy announcements, in the economic questions, in the tone he sets for his cabinet. Canada is operating in a turbulent external environment. The government's job is not to eliminate that turbulence. It's to build enough internal strength that Canadians don't bear the full weight of it. This is the announcement that most Canadians woke up to the morning after the election. And it's worth understanding not just what was announced, but why it was announced this fast. Because of rising global conflict, specifically the war involving Iran, fuel prices have surged across the world. That isn't abstract. It shows up at the pump. It shows up when you fill up your tank before work. It shows up in the cost of goods transported across the country. It shows up in everything. And Carney's government made a decision. They weren't going to wait. Effective the following Monday through to Labor Day, the federal fuel excise tax will be temporarily suspended. That includes gasoline, diesel, and aviation fuel. The numbers? Up to 10 cents per liter off gasoline, up to 4 cents per liter off diesel. Combined with the earlier elimination of the consumer carbon tax, the government is projecting a total reduction of up to 28 cents per liter on gasoline. That is not a symbolic gesture. For families commuting daily, for small business owners running fleets, for transport operators moving goods across the country, 28 cents per liter is real money. And the speed of this announcement matters enormously. This wasn't buried in a budget document 3 months from now. It wasn't announced as a future policy. It was delivered at the first press conference after winning a majority, within hours of the result, alongside the names of the ministers responsible for implementing it. That's not a talking point. That's a governing decision made under time pressure and delivered with accountability attached.
Le progrès du Canada bénéficie tous les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Okay, so we're putting in place, to put it in English, we're putting in place a series of measures. Some will have short-term payoffs. Many will have payoffs in a few years. The bigger projects, the bigger initiatives, we have to change fundamentally our economy to be stronger, more independent, more prosperous. But we want to make sure that those benefit all Canadians. And in
the lighter moments aside, the most substantive exchange of the press conference came from a Toronto Star reporter who asked Carney directly, how serious is the recession risk in Canada right now? And what does it mean for government revenues and household finances? This is the question that separates economic credibility from economic performance. And it's especially pointed because earlier in the same press conference, a reporter had mentioned that Poilievre had called Carney badly educated in economics. Carney didn't take the bait on the insult, but the recession question gave him the floor to answer it in substance, and he did. His response was measured but honest. He acknowledged plainly that the global economy is absorbing an enormous shock, driven by conflict, energy disruption, and supply chain pressure. He did not pretend otherwise. He did not minimize it. But he also explained the logic behind the government's approach. Balance short-term support, like the fuel tax relief, with long-term structural investment, housing, community infrastructure, energy infrastructure, new port capacity. The argument is that these two things are not in conflict. You can provide relief at the pump while laying foundations that restore investor confidence and build the resilient economy Canadians will need when the turbulence settles. Whether that approach works will be tested over time, but the fluency with which he moved between short-term household pressure and long-term macro policy and a live, unscripted answer, that's not something you can fake. That's genuine command of the file. Let's go back to those lighter exchanges, because they deserve more than just a laugh. When a reporter asked whether Poilievre should resign, Carney deflected, but not dismissively. He called him a parliamentarian he respects. He said he'll work with all parliamentarians. He didn't take a victory swing at a political opponent when he had every political opportunity to do so. And when Poilievre's insult was raised, he used humor, then immediately redirected to substance, not defensive comprehensively, not angrily. He named the moment, let the room breathe for a second, and then pivoted straight back to the economic question. What that tells you is this: Carney doesn't need the drama to feel powerful. A lot of political leaders, especially just hours after a majority win, would have used a moment like that to score points, to land a line that makes the news cycle. Carney didn't, and the confidence to resist that impulse when the cameras are on and the room is waiting is a form of discipline that is genuinely rare. Leadership is not only tested in prepared remarks, it is tested in the moments between them, and what Canada saw in that press conference was a leader who passes that test.
Enforcement agency in the country. This is an exceptionally important issue. We all know how we communicate, increasingly in different channels of communication, and the fact is, and I'll give you the example, I just spent a number of hours with Peel Police.
So where does this go from here? Mark Carney has the mandate. He has the majority. He has a cabinet already moving on announcements, and he has framed his government's purpose clearly. Act fast, target real pressure, build for the long term, and do not get distracted. The road ahead, as he himself acknowledged, will not be straight. There will be bumps. There will be global shocks that no government can fully absorb. There will be moments where the plan meets reality and adjustments will be required. But what this press conference established is a tone, and tone at the start of a government matters more than people often realize because it sets expectations, it signals priorities, and it tells the public what kind of leadership they're dealing with. This was not a celebration, this was a transition from candidate to prime minister, from campaign to governance, from promises to decisions. And the first decisions were fast, specific, and grounded in what Canadians are actually feeling right now. The question going forward is not whether Carney has the authority to act. He does. The question is how far he is willing to go and how clearly he is willing to hold his government accountable to the results he has already promised. At Canada Headlines, that's exactly what we're going to keep tracking. If you want clear, grounded, no-noise analysis of the decisions shaping Canada's future every single day, this is the channel for you. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. This is Canada Headlines. Stay informed.